All right, all right, all right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Dondrea, you're here. Nice to see you all. Thank you for sticking around for our final panel of the day. I hope everyone has been enjoying these panels so far. I'm really excited for this panel specifically. It's going to be incredibly cool to see these composers break down their approach to writing score for recent projects, which is so cool. Before I introduce the panel and the moderator, I want to thank our sponsors once again, really quick. So huge thank you to Third Side Music, Simba, Arts and Crafts, Cadence, and High Priestess Publishing. We, as the Canadian Guild, could not have put this whole event on without them, literally. So the attendees, you have our sponsors to thank for this awesome event. You can check out their websites directly on our website, thesoundandvisioncanada.com. Okay, and now on to the final part of the day. I'm stoked about this one. I want to introduce Jody Colero, the famous Jody. Jody's widely known as the owner and operator of one of Canada's premier music production companies, Silent Joe. In late 2018, Jody joined forces with the music production company Grayson Matthews to form the Wilders Music Group. The Toronto-based company writes, arranges, produces music for film, television series, interactive, and online content. In addition to this, the Wilders have created divisions to meet the challenges of music supervision and music editing. Some of Jody's notable credits include CBC's Burden of Truth, CTV's Cardinal, CBS's Ransom, and most recently scored the music composition for the Netflix original drama Spinning Out. Without further ado, take it away, Jody.
Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to have an open discussion about the role of composer in film and television. But before we get to that, I have to do a little business. I have to read you about our partners. Sound and Vision is a free virtual event with suggested donations made to one of two Canadian charities whom we've partnered with. The first is the Black Youth Helpline. Black Youth Helpline is a registered charitable not-for-profit organization with a vision of productive futures for Canada's children and youth. Their mission is primary prevention of social psychological breakdown in communities through a focus on education, health, and community development. Our second partner, our second charity is Black Mental Health Canada. Black Mental Health Canada is a volunteer, nonprofit, community-based organization that helps meet the mental health needs of the diverse Black communities in Canada. Their mission is to facilitate access to affordable, cultural, safe, and affirming mental health services to the Black community through education, advocacy, and provision of resources. Links to both charities can be found in the chat. And we recommend, and we're asking you to drop us a couple of bucks, $2 to $5 per panel would be super cool if you wouldn't mind. So today, I have joining us three forces to be reckoned with, three composers who will introduce themselves, but it's Rob Carli, Casey MQ, whose name I love saying over and over again because it just sounds good to say it, and Genevieve, Vincent. And we're hoping that they're going to share some of their experiences, and if we get lucky, maybe we'll get a little gossip, a juicy story here and there. But before we get to that, I'm going to read you this thing I wrote, and then we'll start. It's been my experience, having worked with some of the best composers and some of the very worst, that the composer's role is the most dangerous of all the moving parts that go into filmmaking. Most dangerous because it's the last frontier. It's the last link in the chain and the final chance for the filmmakers, the actors, the editors, everybody involved to get it right before they have to release it out into the universe. The composer can take a subtle performance and make it deeply moving, or the composer can take an over-the-top performance and make it seem more elegant. the composer can help finesse a clunky edit, create chemistry where there really isn't any. And that's an awesome power and an awesome responsibility. And I want to talk to everybody about that responsibility later. It's kind of a make or break role. In the end, if the composer does his or her job well, usually they put their own egos aside and completed the circle of storytelling to help the audience truly feel and experience the story. And it's about being in the service of the story. And I'll talk to each of our panelists individually about what that means. You're about to hear and see some amazing examples of the discipline of composition from these three. But before we get started, I'd like to just make this one reference from one of the greatest modern composers for TV and film, Henry Mancini, who scored countless films and television shows. He won Academy Awards and one of the first composers whose music transitioned from the film soundtrack to actual global pop hits. At the end of his career, he wrote a book, a memoir, and the title of the book kind of sums up the life of a composer to me. The book was entitled, Did They Mention the Music? And the reason I think it's an important thing is because sometimes, unlike what we go through in music supervision, where we're supposed to find the big song to crack the scene, a lot of times the composer is supposed to be invisible and felt. And I think that's something we'll discuss today too. Okay, I'll stop blathering on, and we will get to the good part, where each composer will introduce themselves, then they're going to play a scene with no music on it, the way they would have seen it for the first time themselves. We'll stop and discuss it, and then we'll play the scene with the music that they actually did. And then we'll open it up to a question and answer, and we'll try and move this along. I'll shut up. Let's start with the lovely Rob Carli. Rob,
morning.
Are you there?
Good afternoon. I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That was a great intro, Jody. When you described the role of composer, it suddenly I got all nervous because I'm thinking to myself, that's a really tough description, what you just gave us there. The job is a bit daunting, and I'm wondering, maybe I'm not cut out for it.
Too late, man.
It's everything you said was very true. And I think, it's good to be reminded of those things, that our job is, it is the last frontier. It's the last thing that happens. And, unfortunately, we're often asked to fix things, which is, a big part of our job is hopefully not wrecking it and hopefully correcting it if it needs to be corrected. So am I supposed to introduce myself? My name is Rob Carli.
Yes, you are.
I'm a film and TV composer based in Toronto. I've been working in the biz for over 20 years. I've done lots of TV lately. I've done lots of film too. I do one film a year, and right now I'm working on a number of series. A couple of them are in production right now. In fact, 3 of them are going. Everything got sort of pushed in the summertime. We had this nice delay, and now it's like do 3 months of work in 4 weeks. So it's really kind of crazy right now with shows like Winona Earp, which I really enjoy working on. It's a sci-fi show. A show called Frankie Drake, which I'm just looking at the first episode right now. We're going into a few months of production on that, and a show called Murdoch Mysteries, which I've been doing for 14 years, which your grandparents might have heard of, or your parents. Not most people. It's been around a long time, but every time I say it, people go, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that show, but I've never seen it." Which is, eventually when you get older, you watch it. I think it appeals to a slightly older or very younger demographic. And then I do a few films. I also play music. I perform a lot still. I'm a saxophone player by training, I guess, and a piano player. And I still get to play music now and then with different ensembles, mostly in the classical world, which has been a great way to learn about orchestration and about music, frankly. Is just, as a saxophone player in an orchestra, you don't do much. You just sit there and you're bored to death, or you're scared to death, because you usually have a little solo to play. And so, growing up and being in my 20s, I used to just sit in pits and on stage playing with orchestras, following the score, which is how I kind of learned how to orchestrate. And that's all. That's all we got.
Okay, but you got a scene for us from something.
Oh yeah. So now the scene thing. So I picked this show. I picked Frankie Drake because, well, I think all projects kind of something is similar about all of them, and that is that you're looked upon as the composer to try to craft I'll say like the sound or the sonic universe of a show, a TV show or a film. So this is going to be from a TV show, but the rules kind of are the same. The stakes might be higher on TV shows because you're really trying to set up a sonic palette for ostensibly a season or many seasons. But then again, in a film, you only really have a short runway to get it right. So you can always change things around, I guess, on a TV series. So the job that I was sort of tasked with is trying to find the sound for this particular show, which is called Frankie Drake Mysteries. These are mysteries set in the 20s. They're kind of light. There's a certain levity and funness to the show. And the producers, so what happens on every show that I've worked on anyway, is producers will give you a laundry list of what they're looking for. We want the music to be, of the time, but we also want it to be modern. We want it to be edgy. I think every producer tells me that they want it to be edgy. Have you ever heard that before, Jody? You want it to be edgy?
No, that's a new one.
You want something edgy. Really? Okay. So, and I get
what one is modern. How do you define modern?
Yeah, we want it to be modern. Well, I guess what they were looking for is they want something different. And the irony is that they do want something different, but they also want something familiar because nobody likes, it doesn't really matter if we're talking about music or we're talking just about filmmaking. And I like to talk about filmmaking because ultimately I think that's a really important thing to talk about if you want to be a film composer. It's not so much about music, but let's talk about filmmaking. And I always tell young composers, what's your advice to a young film composer? And I always say, ask why the director put the camera there. That's kind of where you should start because it's really about filmmaking 101. And then you get into understanding their language. And then through that, you can understand their process. So backing up. So in this scene, I was asked to come up with the sound of a show and it's like 20s. So I thought we're going to do 20s. And I thought, well, let's do, maybe we should watch the scene first, and then I can explain to you what the process was.
Can you explain what you mean by 20?
Oh, the 1920s. So the era that this takes place in is in the 20s. And so the music of that era is kind of jazz, but it's pre-jazz. I mean, we're not swinging yet. Technically, we're sort of between ragtime and swing is the 20s. And the 20s were, famous for being the roaring 20s, flappers, and kind of a wild time because you're post-war, you're before the Depression. In some parts of the country, in America, you're looking at prohibition, or in Canada for that matter. But some places you're not. And there's a whole lot of the stakes are getting higher. There's high rollers, there's more gamblers, there's more people having more fun. And, the music, I think, is becoming a little more adventurous than it was in, the earlier part. Like, it's kind of like finally America has shed Victorianism and all of the things that were there in the turn of the century. And it's now looking forward into the next 100 years. Because if you look at what jazz has done in terms of jazz and blues, I mean, it's not part of this call. It's too long a talk. So we'll talk about that another day.
That's a great setup, Rob. So we're going to hear this dry this is the way you heard it when it was first presented to you.
Yep.
Or what you saw.
Yep.
Great.
Come in. Drinks, madam.
Thank you, Crosby. Oh, carnations. What woman doesn't love the aroma of a funeral? Ginger ale, how cosmopolitan. Do we have to go to this thing tonight, Abe?
Oh, sweetie, we must. This dinner's our ticket to expand into Canada.
Yeah, but does it have to be Toronto?
The city's growing like a wildfire. And Maury Steele needs to be here. Besides, Pumpkin, it's only for a few days.
Yeah, but it's hard to imagine a more boring city filled with more boring people.
Well, then, it's up to us to show them how to live.
Now, Tiger.
What's the point of having beautiful things if you can't show them off?
Not that I don't love to make an entrance, but we shouldn't keep your guests waiting.
Just one thing missing. The pearls. They're gone.
What?
You gotta love a reaction there. It's a little over the top. So the show, I mean, not every mystery show. This is the start of a mystery show, and often there's a setup. You get introduced to a few new characters you've never met before, and then there's a crime obviously committed. There's missing the pearls. That's all just in the background. What the producers want you to do ultimately is this is the start of the show. You can see from the time code we're at 1 hour and 1 minute and 30 seconds. So your job here is to set up the show. You got this great tracking shot. You want to kind of make it lively. You want it to be, give it some energy. You don't want it to be such a downer. I'm not going to play, there is no mystery, so I'm not playing a mystery at all. I'm just really trying to set up a sonic template here for the whole episode, not so much even this particular episode. It's kind of like, this is the sound of this show in the same way that if you look at the set direction or the set decoration, I should say, and the way the thing is shot and the costumes and even the dialogue, they're all of the time. And so you kind of want to either appeal to that or play against that. In this case, the way we came up with the score was, I thought, well, let's use vintage sounding horns, like old saxes and clarinets played with that kind of really high vibrato that you'd hear in, in the 20s and in the 30s. So lots of vibrato and lots of those kinds of tight harmonies, those kinds of like thirds or triads. I thought, let's use the sort of that kind of early big band sound. And then percussion, I thought, well, let's not use drums, but let's use, and to appeal to this edgy idea or this modern idea, let's use sort of modern drum sound. So I'm using a lot of loops. The way I build this score is in live. Actually, I don't usually use live. I use just a regular DAW, like a digital performer in my case, which is better suited for picture. But in this, and we can get into technical stuff if anyone's interested, but I'm using, in this particular cue, I'm using a lot of live because I found live really fun to just float bits and pieces of sound in and then mix things up in a different way. And by doing that, you actually create, I was able to satisfy, I think, the need for the score to sound more modern. So, because it's like I took old elements of me playing saxophone or different instrumentalists, trumpet player, bass player, put them in a room. We did some stuff, and then I cut them up like little loops and samples, and then mix them up in live. It's Ableton Live, and then that sort of, I think, at least I hope, anyway, that was the idea. Was it gives it that kind of more modern sound. So, and then the one last thing is that the show is, like I said, doesn't take itself too seriously. It's kind of almost a cartoon, and so toward the end of the scene, when his reaction is kind of over the top, and so is hers. And I do that with the music. It's almost like scoring animation in its way. It's just kind of like, no one's at home watching this going, oh my God, the pearls are gone. It's just a lot of fun. And, you want to have a laugh. So I try to have a laugh. Sometimes.
Let's have a look.
Come in. Drinks, madam.
Thank you, Crosby. Oh, carnations. What woman doesn't love the aroma of a funeral? Ginger ale, how cosmopolitan. Do we have to go to this thing tonight, Abe?
Ah, sweetie, we must. This dinner's our ticket to expand into Canada.
Yeah, but does it have to be Toronto?
The city's growing like a wildfire. Maury Steele needs to be here. Besides, Pumpkin, it's only for a few days.
Yeah, but it's hard to imagine a more boring city filled with more boring people.
Well, then, it's up to us to show them how to live.
Now, Tiger.
What's the point of having beautiful things if you can't show them off?
Not that I don't love to make an entrance, but we shouldn't keep your guests waiting.
Just one thing missing. Pearls. They're gone.
What?
There it is.
Nice, Rob. So I'm not sure if you're checking the screen to your right, but people are, you got claps, you got bravos, you got whoa, it's
white. Oh, right on.
Yeah.
They noticed the music, in the words of Henry Mancini, right?
Yeah. Wake up, Henry. So, Rob, we're going to take questions on all this stuff later, but one of the things that strikes me is there's a lot going on there. You got horns, you got your interesting loops. Did you set up this as a general, as a first blush of the language of the show?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So then for following scenes, do you dissect that and take little bits of those things out? How does that work?
Well, that's a good question. It's not so much specific to this particular scene. I mean, this scene is built out of a bunch of Lego, if you will, that I've created prior to this. I think this might have been the 6th episode of a season. So it wasn't like the very first thing I did, but I made these building blocks of different instrumentalists and myself playing, even on the banjo, which I don't play, but I was able to play just one chord. If you get an A minor chord and then just play it and then sample that and then just chop it up. It sounds like a loop, which is why it sounds kind of not like of the time. But yeah, so this is basically like Lego. Like you get your sonic blocks and then you put them all together.
Before I ask you more, is there 2 scenes from you?
No.
Do we already have 2 or just the one?
Just one.
Okay, so there are a million questions coming in, and I think if we're gonna have everybody have a chance to ask you questions, I think I better move on.
Yep.
And we can have a group discussion if you're cool with that.
Absolutely. I'm happy.
Okay.
Sit back and relax.
Yeah, chill for a while and look at some of the comments. They're really good.
Okay.
Genevieve, we'll move to you. If you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hey, everybody. I'm Genevieve Vincent, and I am the composer of The Broken Hearts Gallery, which is my first studio movie, and it's a rom-com currently available on Amazon. You can buy it anywhere. The score is out via Sony Soundtracks, and I am also a Canadian, but I live in Los Angeles. And recently I also scored Moving Art Hokkaido, which is on Netflix. What else should I say? I'm a piano principal, I guess, but also vocals is kind of what I went to Berkeley for, Berkeley College of Music. And I took film scoring and composition when I was there. And so that was my focus. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I'm gonna ask a question that has nothing to do with what you're about to play us. And you can answer it any way you wish, but I am noticing with a lot of TV and film production that I get asked the same question. I'm not an agent, but I work with composers, and I'm getting asked if I have female composers that I work with, which is the first time I have been asked. The last 2-3 years, that question gets asked to me. Normally, it's the opposite. It's like I'll put a female composer in, and like all of us, probably everybody participating in this panel, gender means nothing. It's just like music. We're making music. What does it matter? Like whatever. But for some reason, for the first 50 years, 50, 60 years of television and film, there weren't many female composers. Is that a barrier was that a barrier for you when you started? Is it no longer a barrier? Is it still a barrier? What's your take? I'm not female, you are. I need to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's an interesting question. I think that the funny thing about like barriers is that I think with stuff like that, I'm not going to be privy to someone not hiring me because I'm a woman or hiring me because I'm a woman. So like that part of me is hard to speak to, because like if they did take that into consideration, they wouldn't tell me directly probably. So in that way, no. But I think like when I was coming up, when I was like getting out of Berkeley and looking for, someone to assist, I think it was a little bit trickier to maybe form those relationships with composers, that sort of mentor-mentee relationship. I think than it was for some of my like male peers. just because I think, I don't know, maybe it's just that people like to see themselves in the person they're mentoring. And so I think maybe like without realizing it, like you might pick someone who's a lot like you to like teach and mentor and stuff and guide. So I think a lot of where the disparity in my like personal experience where I see it is more at the beginning when you're starting out and you're trying to kind of find people to like take a chance on you or like take you under their wing. And like luckily I had when I started out after Berkeley, I started working in actually music supervision first. And I ended up getting taken under the wing of some great music supervisors and working for them. And that kind of like taught me a lot about the business. And that was like a great way also for me to kind of see things from the perspective of someone hiring a composer to kind of be able to like troubleshoot some of the stuff that they're thinking about. Like, and I really feel like getting back to the sort of like gender politics side of it, I feel like, you know, I really trust that music supervisors really care about their jobs and they really care about what they're doing and they care about the quality. Like everyone that I ever worked with, like, I don't think they would have compromised, you know, their work to like check a box or to exclude someone. I think people really are just generally looking for the best sound, like you said. And I think it's just about sort of the numbers and like getting more women, kind of like supporting women when they're young and they're starting out and trying to like mentor people and that, if that answers your...
For what I've noticed is there are certain projects where I'll give an example and then we'll get on to your thing. But we did a Ted Bundy project for Amazon, and it's sort of a documentary. It's on now, and it was whittled down to 2 composers, a male and a female. And they chose the female not because they like, to be honest with you, no one saw anybody, no faces, and they didn't look at the CVs. I had color coded everything, so they had to choose based on music. But her perspective on the effect that Ted Bundy had on women of that time and women now was so different musically from his take that it was so nuanced and it was a completely different, like musically it was a different language. And you can see over 5 episodes or whatever, I think it was 5 episodes, 1 hours, like her take on that was completely different. It would have been a completely different thing. So there is something, I don't know why I'm going down this road. Sorry guys, I find it very fascinating. Let's get to your music and your scene, and we can circle back to this if everybody has questions.
All good.
Want to set up the scene for us?
Yeah, for sure. So so this scene, first of all, the movie The Broken Hearts Gallery is what the scene's from. And this is the ending scene. This is like where the leading man sort of rushes in and decides, I'm going to do this grand gesture and win her over, the leading lady. And basically the movie is about this 20-something girl who lives in New York City, has a bad breakup, and it's revealed that every time she has a relationship, she keeps these souvenirs from each relationship. And of course, all of her friends think she's a crazy hoarder. And then it starts to come out that everybody is keeping shit from their previous relationships. And she decides to start this thing called the Broken Hearts Gallery, so that like everyone can like give up these things they're attached to and by the way like have this catharsis and get over their relationships. So yeah, this last scene is the culmination of everything in that movie and the resolution, if you will.
Great.
But love makes you do crazy, stupid, irrational things, and I guess what I'm trying to say, Lucy, is I love you. I love you, Lucy.
Yeah, I heard you. I'm gonna get back to my speech now.
Maybe I should just.
No, it's getting
You should
awkward
stay.
that you're
You
not
should
saying
stay.
back. It's
I think
getting
you
sort
should
of
stay.
awkward that you're not.
Love him back, right?
I think.
Right?
Yeah, I think you should love him back.
Yeah.
You should love him back.
You should love him. I think that feels right. You should love him back.
Love
No,
him
that was-
back.
Are we
That would be a
chatting
great
back?
choice.
Yes,
Yes,
I love
yeah,
stopping.
what the
Love him
context
back.
was.
Love
So-
him back. Love
Love
him
him
back.
Oh, we're
Love
chanting.
him
We're
back.
chanting now.
Love him back. Love him back.
Whoa, okay.
Love him back.
Okay.
Love him back. Love him back.
Be enough. Be quiet. Just, excuse me. Excuse me.
Hi.
I'm a lump of coal. I feel nothing.
I changed the name of the hotel. It's not a big deal.
If I didn't do this, they would all turn on me, so this is for them. You're the only person we didn't collect anything from.
Why is that?
Because I love you too.
Oh, Genevieve, you got so much ground to cover.
Yeah, I know. It's a juicy scene. It's great.
Do you want to talk to us before we hear what's going on? How you were briefed and what they want to feel, also what you felt and what you want to do with the scene? Just
Yeah,
talk
for
about it.
sure. Yeah, for sure. So this was cool. Natalie Krinsky, the director and writer, she was really in charge of me and what I was the creative. Like everyone let her sort of run wild, which was awesome. Because it made it very focused for me to just sort of do what would make her happy. So I think they definitely wanted like a nice, like juicy ending for sure. They didn't want it to be cheesy. And like throughout the film, like I used a lot of like analog synths, electric guitar, a little acoustic guitar, drum machine, like electric drum machine, and like the Roland. And then I also used 18 strings. So this scene has kind of like all those things going on. And I had this kind of like nostalgic emo guitar theme that I like bring back here. So that's kind of their love theme. And then the strings kind of just like lift it up and like just, give us the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Should we have a listen?
let's do.
But love makes you do crazy, stupid, irrational things, and I guess what I'm trying to say, Lucy, is I love you. I love you, Lucy.
Yeah, I heard you. I'm gonna get back to my speech now.
Maybe I should just.
No, it's getting
You should
awkward that
stay.
you're
You
not
should
saying
stay.
back.
I
It's
think
getting
you
sort
should
of
stay.
awkward that you're not.
Love him back, right? Right?
Yeah, I think you should love him back.
You should love him back.
I think that feels right.
him back.
You should love him back.
Love
Yeah, no,
him
that was.
back.
I know that was sweet, but
Yes,
you don't
I
really,
love
you don't know what
stopping.
the
Love him
context
back.
is here.
Love
So
him back. Love him back.
Oh, we're chanting. We're chanting now.
Love him back.
whoa, okay. This is.
Love him back.
Be enough. Be quiet. Just, excuse me. I'm a lump of coal. I feel nothing.
I changed the name of the hotel. It's no big deal.
If I didn't do this, they would all turn on me, so this is for them. You're the only person I didn't collect anything from.
Why is that?
Because I love you too.
Amazing. Again, I'm not sure if you're seeing the comments. Fire, very cool. Love this. Love, like that. Still look better with the music.
Yay!
Hearts now, getting all kinds of good stuff. So,
Thanks, people.
I'm going to move on to Casey because we're running out of time. But one question before we do that: whose perspective were you most caring about in that scene? Hers, his, or is it, or did it rise above both of that? Like, who is that scene about?
I think that scene is about, it's more about the experience of them finally getting together. So I think that one's more of an omnipresent view of it. But that little like that guy, that little guitar lick, that's kind of like I said, like their little theme that flows throughout the film. So that kind of speaks a little bit to their relationship. Yeah, so I think this one's more of an omnipresent kind of vibe.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, the moment I've been waiting for, I get to say it out loud. KCMQ. I like saying it.
Hey, happy to be here.
Can you tell us about yourself besides you have the coolest name in all of musicdom?
My name is KCMQ, and the only reason why that's my name is because my last name is horribly long, so I had to shorten it. I've been working in film composition over the last, I would say, like four or 5 years, and I've been making music, for I guess 10 years. And yeah, I mean, I come from a classical background, but I also have a really deep love for pop music and electronic music and sound design. And so those worlds have sort of been a constant intersection for me in what I do. And yeah, that's a little bit about what I do. And I like to straddle the line between making pop music, making electronic music, and making film composition, and seeing those things all come together sometimes and sometimes completely separate.
What's your main instrument? Are you keyboards, guitar?
Yeah, I grew up piano, classical piano.
Sorry, this is not like some kind of weird interview thing, but I'm curious how you go from being classically trained to electronica. Did something motivate you to make that leap, or you just a natural thing?
You know what? Like they both still exist, and I think I'm always fascinated about how I can always continue to find them crossover and intersect. I was listening to pop music and electronic music as a kid, so that was just something that had played a role in my life forever. And so at some point I was making strictly pop music, and then going over to back to classical. And I find that there's a lot of opportunity in that in film composition.
Do you want to set up your scene for us?
Yeah, so this is a film called Firecrackers, and it was released in 2018, and it's directed by Jasmine Mazafari. And this scene that I am showing here is also the final scene of the film, and so yeah, it kind of is a revealing moment. Basically, like this is the moment of the film where like sort of the film is quiet. It's a lot of dialogue, it's a lot of talking, and it's a lot of these characters.
Story of resolution or
yeah, exactly, the boiling of the tension. And basically really what this is coming to is like it's a release, and that's what the film needed at this moment. It was a really sort of feeling these exterior shots was sort of a chance to actually breathe and let out some energy a little bit. And so that's a discussion that Jasmine and I had talked about. And it was really like the piece came because I had made like 15 ideas of just like exploring what I felt the world was saying. And then like piece number 15 was like the one that we were like, okay, this is the moment that we need for the end of the film. And then we built it out from there.
Great. Let's have a look. Very cool, Casey. Also, that's an interesting sort of example of what I was talking about earlier, where it's not necessary for you to hit every moment. It was the slow build, and that's of course part of the mix, but it's very much the writing too, where you knew your moment was coming, so you didn't have to overplay your hand, and then when the moment does come, it's a lift. I don't know if you're seeing, but we've got sound painting, and I got chills, and it's quite
it was cool because for me what was exciting is like we ended up going in like actually like a lot of the sound, I know there is like zoom compression and stuff like that, but actually the sound is literally supposed to sort of sound like it's falling apart, and like so a lot of the granular, like I was using a lot of granular synths and like taking the sound and really mangling it to the point where it would feel like it's ripping, you know what I mean? So and you feel that sort of release.
I have a feeling we should get to Q&A. I would like to talk to all three of you all night, but I don't think it matters what I would like. So do we just go through these questions? Is that what we do, Don?
Yeah, feel free to go through the cues here, Jody. And, you know, there's a couple directed to Rob, there's a couple directed to Genevieve, and some to you.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing right off the top. How did you all first gain entry? And I mean, for a lot of people here, they're young and up and coming composers, and they want to know how to get in. And, you know, is music supervisors, is that an approach? Is there another way? I'll throw it to the group.
I came from like experimental music and classical music beforehand, and I'd done a couple films for like some friends in university. And then at some point I made the decision to go to I applied for the Slate music residency, and I did that for a year as a songwriter, but I had an intention to become a composer. So it was a sort of a segue for me to sort of just really express that side of myself. And from there, I started working in films from making those relationships. The Canadian Film Center.
How did the other two get in? How did you other two get in?
I always wanted to do, I mean, I went to university and I studied composition. I was always interested in film music, even when I was in high school. And then I did, like Casey, I scored some student films. And then after school, you know, I was like, I was in a band touring around Canada, having a good time, but I was really trying to get my shit together. And I did a bunch of just demo tracks and and I actually got in through advertising, just sending my reel out. I think I sent one to the Einstein brothers, Jody, way back when. Never got a call back.
No, sorry.
Just kidding. But then I really wanted to do film and
I
TV.
had young kids at the time.
Yeah, it's like good time for that. I was on 3/4 inch in those days. Those are expensive reels. So then I started to, you know, I'd always been fascinated with scoring for picture, and so it's a matter of getting your music. It's not just about your music. To me, it's about how your music works with picture. And you can see that so well in the last clip from Casey. And it's like, and also Genevieve's piece, where you have to really practice the idea of of doing demos where you're writing to another, it's a real collaborative thing where you're writing to picture or writing to another medium like art or just still pictures or photography or whatever. So you can work with your music is working in tandem with something else. And then you just keep doing that. And that's how I got in. And it took me years, but it's a good journey. So that's my story.
Genevieve?
Yeah, same with me. I did student films when I was at Berkeley. I scored some short films for some like Vancouver filmmakers and stuff because that's where I was from. So they were kind of like willing to take a chance and be like, yeah, you can do this for free. And I actually, when I went full time as a composer, when I moved to LA, I was actually doing writing for ads, which is great because like Rob was saying, because you really sort of learn to write to picture and you just do so many of them and you just grind it out. So I work for a lot of different music houses. I still do stuff for ads sometimes too. And then I did like quite a few remixes, working like for some record labels, like doing basically like orchestral trailerizations of like classic songs. So like doing, in fact, one of the ones I just did got on the Joe Biden campaign, which is super rad. So you never know where they're going to end up. But I did a remix of a Nina Simone track called New World Coming with my bandmate. And yeah, so I mean, I think for me, just like being a little bit of a jack of all trades was helpful because when it came to like submitting reels, I just had a lot of material. And I just think like writing tons and tons of music. And then I think like, you know, when you're like first starting to try to find like a job, I definitely think like assisting people is great if you can get that kind of gig. But I also think like any job in music is great because I think you can like learn so much from, yeah, like the supervisors or like an orchestrator, or like anybody that's like willing to let you work around them or work for them, you know, in music, like has something to teach you about like the whole business. And I think I just, you know, would do literally anything when I was starting out in terms of music stuff. So
yeah, I like to refer to the advertising business as sort of Navy SEALs, SWAT team assassin training. If you can make it through that,
it's true. Yeah.
Daniel Hill has asked a really interesting question, which kind of falls off what we're talking about. With his question is, what would a normal conversation sound like between decision makers and composers in setting the tone of the scene through the composition for the scene? And it's interesting, before you guys answer, what does a normal conversation sound like? I'd like those of you who haven't worked in TV or film yet to know that every situation is different. It generally it's been my experience, not always, but it's been my experience generally, if it's an independent film, it's the director who is leading the creative charge. In television, it could be the showrunner, it could be the writer, it could be two showrunners who don't agree with each other, which is another one that seems to be happening a lot lately. Or it could be the writer and pulling. I just wanted to set the tone that you don't actually, it's not across the board, you're taking your instructions from one person. It's that person changes it job to job, piece to piece. The question, sorry, Rob, the question was, what's a normal conversation sound like between you and the decision maker?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, like, as much as the circumstances can change, whether it's a director or a producer or a writer, one thing that's often common and almost universally every time is that you're not speaking to a musician, and your job is to really decode a musical language. Like, it's very the more I do this, the more I realize, or the more I try to get into the head of the creator, whoever it is, if it's a director or a producer or a showrunner, and just sort of try to understand where they're coming from and their perspective, and what emotionally they're trying to achieve with their show. And it's the more you can do that and not talk about, whatever, a harmonic minor scale, which I don't think you do, but just the idea of getting too much into the weeds about the music and more talking at a higher level, just about the characters and about what the story is and what the emotional currency is here. Like that's really what it comes down to, is what you're trying to achieve emotionally with the music.
Yeah, for me, like I love having like a dialogue, usually with the director. For me, like about like the musical landscape, like where are we living, like what is this world, and like I love having like a back and forth in that regard, to really then understand like what then we're gonna like sort of use as our key elements, and that time, like I even think like I know people sort of like have their opinions around temp music, and that obviously is a thing that, you know, can cause problems sometimes. But if you talk to the director early enough, I think it's gonna be really quite exciting to share musical references where maybe the language and the barrier can happen. Like you can actually just like say, like you can use it as a sort of a dialogue, which like if you have your own taste and they have their taste, it's a bit of a back and forth, and you can establish something.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Well, I agree.
yeah, like on both sides. Yeah.
Same here. I think I'll comment on like, so I've done some TV movies where I've worked with a production company and then a studio, and that's like the only time where like to add something, like sometimes I get conflicting information, and I think that can be tricky because you really just have to like listen to everybody. You need to make sure everybody feels heard, and you need to make sure like, you know, you figure out what's really important to both people to try to like make them happy. And like sometimes if people are in like direct conflict, like this person's like it needs to be big and this person's like I want it to be understated, then you need to like at times like I've had to be like, so you know, production wants it to be more understated, you know, like, can we like split the difference? Like, and sometimes it's just like, you know, the studio's in charge and like, you just have to do what they want and you hope production will understand. But yeah, that can be, I think, trickier, like when you don't have just like the one, you always have like, I feel like a top dog that you're like, that's the person I'm really like trying to please. But yeah, you know, you're always trying to like make sure that you give everybody something. I think in those like TV movie situations.
I think we're all saying the same thing. If I could give one piece of information, it's about what I said at the beginning, and I just want to drive it home. Is there's always a top dog. Yes, it's good to explore the worlds, but the role of the composer is completely different to any other thing in the chain. You're the last piece of language they have to modify their story. And we, as composers, your job is to be in the service of the story. And if you're truly helping the story, then usually the conflict goes away or can be mitigated. And so if for the young composers out there who are bashing their heads against the wall, it's like, why do I have to do this? I hate this. This isn't what I feel. This is the worst thing ever. This guy's an idiot. Maybe, quite possibly, they're an idiot. It's probably 50-50, they're an idiot. But on the other 50% of that is maybe you're not in the service of the story. So think about that, and think about another approach musically that helps the audience, not you or that person, but just helps the audience actually experience the story. And if you do that, 90% of the time, you can find your way through conflict, right? Do you guys feel the same way? Or?
Yeah, I resonate with that for sure.
Or just fight it out.
That doesn't go well.
No, I don't think fighting is it's not the best.
Do we have time for one more, Andrea?
Yeah, well, one more is perfect.
What would it be like a tech thing? There's some tech stuff. There's a what's coming, which is sort of interesting. Like, are you guys seeing any genres for TV and film that, like, is there a consciousness shift musically towards anything in the next 6 months to a year? Any new trends?
I don't know what the new trends are, because I mean, everything's so different. I mean, every show I find is different. And so it's really hard to project what is going to be either fashionable or of interest to people. But one thing I am trying to do and I think everyone does this, and that is to try. The cool thing about music is that there's so many different branches on the tree that you really like. I grew up, like I said, playing classical music, and I played a lot of jazz music, and now I'm getting more into electronic music, and it's just like you can go deep so many different places. There's different shows I work on have different kinds of needs, and I just it's nice to just be able to remove yourself. It's almost like learning a new language. It's akin to that, like the idea of learning a new style. Like if you want to get into guitar playing, let's say you're not a guitar player, it can be really fascinating, and you can really wake up and learn a lot of different kinds of sounds, and it's just I love that about what we do, is that there really is no end to the exploring.
Me too.
Are the two other composers, are you guys noticing any trends?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like it's interesting because I totally agree with Rob that like it's just like the idea of music and film, it's just like so expansive, and you can really just like you can go to so many areas at this point. So like, I mean, to say like there's a trend coming, like, I mean, maybe the only thing that I would say is that there's like, you could maybe say there's like individuality in each world, but I don't know. I've always seen that actually. So it's always existed.
I think, what's always going to be fashionable is melodies. I think they never go out of fashion. And I just listened to, I watched Succession recently, and I've just watched The Queen's Gambit, which are kind of related in the sense that I think they're the same guy actually. Oh no, they're different guys, but different composers, I should say, but similar scores in that it's very classical based, which I was kind of surprised that these kinds of scores are still very fashionable and in favor amongst certain kinds of productions. But regardless if they're electronic or not, what they are is they're melodic. And I find that melodies will never go out of fashion. So if it's electronic music and you have great melodies, I love that. It's just so great. And if you're writing country music and you have great melodies, it works,
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
think too, like always, like, I mean, maybe this again, like same, like you can really predict trends. It's sort of like trying to like write a record that's going to be popular a year from now. You just like have to just write something and hope that people like it, I guess. But I think for me, like just in terms of getting inspiration from new things, like when I get kind of sick of like the same synths and the same like in the box stuff, and I'm just kind of like not inspired by it, I always like go back to like a string player, or like I always go back to like the simplest possible thing, or like the piano or something, and then I like self-impose like the most like okay, like you're just going to use this one thing in every possible way that you can. Or like a woodwind, like okay, I'm going to write this only for like clarinet, flute, and bass clarinet, and then I'm like suddenly I'm finding like holy shit, like the bass clarinet can play like incredibly beautiful harmonics that sound like an electronic pad. And it's like weird because I think you can like, it's like weird because electronics that are trying to mimic all this organic stuff, but you can also mimic electronic stuff with organic stuff. So like I feel like it almost doesn't matter what you use as long as you have like the thing in your head and then you just do it. I don't know.
It's an amazing point, Genevieve. Amazing point. And like composers like Philip Glass and Steve Reich and all those guys have been doing that for a long time. They're using 18 musicians. It sounds like a giant synth pad. It's like, what the hell? Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't like me saying that, but whatever. It's interesting though that you're suggesting to go to a really granular level and see what you can discover. Like just don't like, it's not let's pile on the choices. It's like really drill down and get good at finding whatever it is you're looking for. Really interesting. I think we have to call it, don't we, Dawn?
That is correct. It is time to wrap up this amazing panel.
And I have to ask you one more time, and thank you for coming, everybody. Thanks to our amazing panelists, each of you a force of nature, and to everybody here. But a reminder to please send in your donations to either Black Youth Helpline or Black Mental Health, and the links will be shared again in the chat. We'd really appreciate $1 or $2 or $5 or $10 or whatever you can spare. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to all of the panelists. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, everyone. Please stick around tomorrow. We have more panels tomorrow. Tomorrow's our advertising day. So we're going to go into breaking down advertising and brands as a panel. And then after that, we have a very cool workshop called Here's the Brief, where we're going to go behind the scenes of a DoorDash ad that just came out featuring Havaya Mighty. So we're going to have her and the supervisor, Kaya Pino, as well as the advertising agency speaking with us to talk about that. So please come back tomorrow. Thank you so much for hanging out today. And we'll see you soon.